Hello and welcome back to RiseRelief. Welcome back to my channel. I am Tia, the founder of RiseRelief. This is a student loan borrower company in which we help student loan borrowers to pay off their student loan debt through crowdfunding. And today we're going to be discussing the origins of student loans and where they've come from, why college even exists, why we need to borrow money. And so let's go right into it. So I conducted a little bit of research and just out of curiosity was wondering, why do we have to take out loans? And because I've heard that there are other countries who allow their students, college students, to go to school for free. So why do we have to pay here in the U.S.? And then, of course, there are some countries where student loan borrowers have to pay and they have to take out loans to pay for college. But there are some that are free. But I just was wondering, why do we have to take out loans? So let's just see what the history of our colleges here in the United States have to offer. Okay, so it says during the infancy years of the American higher education institution, colleges did have tuition. Okay, so people who were of affluence, they did have to pay here in the U.S. As student loans, they did not exist at all because the people could afford it. Plus, it was cheap. So institutions like Harvard, everyone's heard of them. They were founded in 1636. The William and Mary College in 1693 was founded. Yale was founded in 1701. They did charge tuition and fees. Obviously, these are businesses, and so the professors have to get paid. They have to pay for the properties. They have to pay for books. They have to pay for different things to keep the colleges up and running. So the colleges also were typically from religious or charitable organizations. Okay, so students from wealthier families had better access to higher education, while others relied on benefactors or religious institutions for support. So all in all, we have people who are wealthy. They were able to afford to go to college. Okay, so back then, the average cost of tuition in Harvard was $1,300 to $1,800. Okay. Yale's tuition back then would equate to approximately $1,040 to $1,500. Okay. This also included room, board, and other fees. The total annual cost could reach up to $5,000 to $6,000 in today's money, so to speak. All right. So the College of William and Mary sometimes offer free or low-cost education to indigenous students or young men from poor families, especially if they intended to become missionaries or teachers. For the average colonial worker, tuition was equivalent to several months or even a year's income. To pay for college, scholarships were offered as well as work-study arrangements or sponsorships for a free ride. And so it sounds like what's going on today with colleges. We do have a lot of scholarships that are offered, a lot of grants that help with people who have lower income. We also have different ways like work studies, which will help students pay for colleges. However, the tuition amount is through the roof at this point, which we're not going to talk about that right now. America experienced a college boom that began to occur within the centuries of the 1800s to the 1900s. Okay, so now we're entering into the industrial era where a lot of specialties and specializations were needed for people to gain some sort of education, where apprenticeships, they were still happening, but people needed to have a degree in order to get newer jobs because times were changing from the 1600s well over into the 18 to the 1900s. Okay, so colleges began to become more and more in demand, moving from colonial clergy and specialization degrees into the fields of professional degrees, okay, such as law, engineering, and medicine. So now we have doctors coming, we have lawyers, we have engineers, because again, the industrial age was happening at the time, and so people needed to learn how to acquiesce to what the environment was doing career-wise. Newly constructed universities were no longer fabricated in a small manner, but they were becoming larger as the population and demand for higher education grew across the U.S. Unfortunately, the only people that were allowed to go to college were white men. Women could not go. African Americans could not go. And so around this time, there was this particular advantage for white males to go to college, especially if they had the wealth. But as time progressed within this growth of more people wanting to go to school, a college called Oberlin College in Ohio became one of the first colleges to admit women as well as African Americans in the 1830s. Although women and African Americans weren't still allowed to attend in most colleges, this particular college allowed them. And this was due to, obviously, segregation laws. The government even began to step in. They began to offer allotted land for other universities to be built. Now, as time had progressed, tuition costs began to rise. Okay. Now, student loans, we're still in the early 1900s. They hadn't existed yet. So the government began to come into the forefront and they began to help out. Now, only Harvard in the 1840s offered student loans to its constituents before the American government did. Now, in 1867, the U.S. Department of Education was established, and its job was to gather information and statistics about education across the U.S. to help states establish a standard in school systems. And in 1944, the GI Bill was passed to pay for World War II veterans' college tuition, as well as by 1958 to compete with the Soviet Union in space engineering and science efforts, mathematics, and languages. The National Defense Education Act was enacted to give scholarships, grants, and loans to high school students aspiring to create a career in those particular categories. This was also strategic in helping the nation bolster national defense. And so around this time, we were beginning to compete with, y'all heard of Soviet Union, Russia, China, and, World War II ended up happening. And so there was this race to the moon. And so we were racing not only to the moon, but we were also racing with other nations to begin to build up a population that was very intelligent, very well educated, so that we can compete industrial wise as well as technologically. And so this is where college was in a higher demand. And at this point, now tuition is starting to go through the roof just a little bit. By 1965, it was when the student loan era began to charge full steam ahead, with Congress passing the Higher Education Act. And so this is where our student loans started coming in 1965. The American government began to recognize that the accessibility due to tuition costs were hindering Americans from going to college. Now, it sounds like our government cares so much about us. And this is the reason why they were allowing people to take out loans. They really wanted us to be competitive in the marketplace, competitively across the board, internationally. And so they were beginning to do these different types of loans and grants to help everyone, pretty much everyone by this point, to be able to go to school at any given time. OK, and so this is a particular act to allow educational opportunity grants to be given for students with obviously financial tuition, severe financial needs. The government viewed higher education as essential for U.S. economic prosperity. So the U.S. government, they were in the game of making sure that our nation was prosperous and we remained number one in the world by providing educational opportunities for everyone. So the Higher Education Act was enacted to oversee, have some oversight, and to take a look at making sure that there were standardized rules for loans that were given to people. OK, and so we have the Federal Family Education Loan Program, which allows banks and private institutions to provide government subsidized and guaranteed loans to students. And in 1966, the National Association of Financial Aid Administration was founded to monitor these new loans, OK, that were given to students. So now your private sector has come in, which that, again, is a whole nother conversation and another video for another day, because sometimes when you apply for a student loan in college, the financial aid FAFSA doesn't cover the whole thing. So then you got to step outside of the government and take out private loans. And that in and of itself is pretty much the same boat with a few different rules than the government, but it's still the same thing. OK, so we have all of these people going to college, and on average in the 60s and the 70s, roughly 10 to 15% of college students were taking out student loans at this point, as the Pell Grant covered majority of tuition. And during these times, the proportion of students taking out loans for college was much smaller than it is today. Well, obviously, because wages matched, right? Wages matched living expenses. Today, our wages do not match our living expenses. So, yes, they would have not taken out as many loans as we are doing today. Okay, so this was primarily due to the lower cost of tuition. Oh, that was the other factor. More robust federal and state funding for education and the availability of grants and scholarships. The cost of college in the 60s had an average annual loan amount that ranged from, get this, $200 to $500. $200 to $500. Adjusted for inflation, okay, this would be equivalent to just a mere $2,000 to $5,000. They were taking out $2,000 student loans versus us today, $11,000, $25,000, $50,000, right? So it's unbelievable. I guess we were born in the wrong time. So in contrast, the College Board research states that back in 2024-2025 school year, the average annual tuition and fees cost in the United States was approximately $11,610 annually, reflecting a 2.7% increase from the previous year, which was 2023-2022 school year. Business Insider stated that out-of-state tuition back in 2024 and 2025 was around $30,780 annually, marking a 3.2% rise from the previous year. And then, to top it off, private, nonprofit, four-year institutions, the average tuition and fees were $43,350, a 3.9% increase from the 2023-2024 academic school year. This, ladies and gentlemen, shows that as the years pass, as inflation happens, it puts people in a bind, and now here we are. High student loan costs. So all in all, we went from $1,000 tuition annual fee back in the 1600s all the way to, depending on the school, 40 grand tops, or a little bit more than that annually. And in order to make it in this world, we have to go to college or we have to go to some kind of school. But now we know that there are ways to build wealth, but you have to be educated, and education costs money. And in order to pay that, you have to take out loans. It's just as simple as that. Lucky for some of you all, your parents were able to pay for your college tuition, but a lot of people were not fortunate to have that particular benefit. We do have people that have scholarships, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, for the majority of us, we had to take out student loans. And so this is the reason why I started RiseRelief. This is a phenomenal company that is going to help all of us get out of student loan debt, because there's absolutely no system that has been created and is going to do what we are doing right now. And we are building up a platform in which we're going to utilize student loan debt crowdfunding to help one another pay off our student loans. And so the process is, when you get on my website, you're going to go in, you're going to sign up, you're going to make your monthly contribution, you're going to get your name into the line or the queue. And when your name comes up without any strings attached, we're going to call your loan services and we're going to pay off your loans. It's as simple as that. Nothing more, nothing less. And I can't wait until we get this thing up and running, because it's going to be great. And so we are now in the working process. I am building a team. And as soon as that queue opens, please hurry up and get your name on the list. If you have not already, please like and subscribe. Please share this channel, because it's going to be so beneficial for you, for your friends, for your family, because at the end of the day, we all want to be debt free. Am I right? Yeah, you want to be debt free. And so do I. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.